Before we start, please note that this episode contains mild spoilers for the conclusion of The Midnight Walk. These come towards the end of the first interview on the show, but are time-stamped, so you can skip ahead if you want to. That's all. Let's walk.
The reasons why The Nightmare Before Christmas is good have very little to do with Tim Burton, its much lauded progenitor and frequently cited creative visionary. The film is based on a story and characters by him, but every component of what constitutes a film around that is handled by other people. The whimsical screenplay was written by Caroline Thompson, who also wrote Homeward Bound. The film was directed by Henry Selick of Coraline, and the music, the songs that will outlive us all, were composed by Danny Elfman. The most important aspect of The Nightmare Before Christmas, the things that have allowed it to linger in the cultural memory like a cobweb that you walk through, is the way it looks and the way it feels. For this, we should probably look to art director Dean Taylor, who also worked on Fern Gully 2, which is a shame, and cinematographer Pete Kozaczyk, who also handled visual effects for Starship Troopers, which is not a shame. The way things look and feel are as important as the words those things are saying or the songs those things are singing. We connect with basically anything that entertains us, but I don't think it's a stretch to say that tighter and more personal bonds are formed with things that are real. Tangible, tactile things. Kermit the Frog's lived-in fuzz and expressively twisty face transcend generations in a way that most smooth, shiny DreamWorks productions can't. Kids do notice the human thumbprints on Wallace and Gromit. Beyond the laughs, they remember those. Moonhood's The Midnight Walk comes from the same place. The game originally released in May 2025, so if you're already aware of it, you're likely also well aware of its visual design. The game was created using more than 700 clay models that were 3D scanned into the game. Stop-motion animation was utilised to animate character movement. Visually, the reference points are the aforementioned Henry Selick joint, but also his, quietly now, much better 2009 follow-up, that also being Coraline. But, like any media that hits and hits hard, it draws influence from outside of its own form. The developers credit Patrick McHale's Emmy Award-winning animated series Over the Garden Wall, Hans Christian Andersen's The Little Match Girl, and, of course, David Lynch. What can I say? I have a type. I see other influences. The canted rooftops, skewed architecture, inhuman faces and bent backs are straight out of 1920s German Expressionism. The tone and general theming, once abundant locales turned to seed as a result of greed, violence or any number of other deviant impulses, is pure Grimm's fairy tale. The lore and the language, the Mulgrims and the nobodies, the way those words roll around, comfortable yet warning, reminds me of the Moomins, if the Moomins' darker subtext were less between the lines and more of the lines themselves. The visual and tonal identity of this game is a true melting pot of decades of recognisable influences, smartly and deliberately deploying toy-like creatures and twisting them into cosily horrific shapes. Bug eyes, buck teeth, asymmetrical antagonists, stalking languidly through lost, lopsided locales. You've seen this general style elsewhere, but the effect here is no less impressive. The totality of all of this is wonderful. The Midnight Walk originally released as a PSVR2 experience, so you kind of can, but in its current second coming on Nintendo Switch 2, where I played it, it looks like something you can reach out and touch. And in spite of the fact that, if you did, you'd likely lose a hand, you want to. You want to reach into the screen and poke and prod these creatures, pick up the ragged dolls, shells, maps, and other knickknacks hidden in the world, to turn them over and over to truly appreciate the knots and fibres in every cloth, the grooves and lines in the sad face of every weird, sad beast. In a video posted on Moonhood's social channels, a member of the team walked around the studio with a microphone concealed in a handmade papier-mâché moon, asking other members of the team what the best part of working with clay is. One response from one colleague was, "Because you can see the thumbprints." They get it. I'm talking about The Midnight Walk now, nearly a year after its original release, because, as mentioned, it has recently released on Switch 2. It's a casual reminder of what the system can achieve visually. It's not Final Fantasy VII Remake or Resident Evil Requiem in terms of pure fidelity, but it is a form of high-quality eye candy delivered so effectively that it can't be ignored. But again, that's not why I'm talking about it. The visual design of the Midnight Walk, that big flashing sign marked Tim Burton fans, please stop here, is how the game sells itself. It's how the game creeps into your hands. But what makes the game creep into your mind and linger, like a thumbprint, is the way it sounds. Hi, I'm Andrew. Welcome to Dialogue Tree. This is episode 40. A Human Touch. Listening to the Midnight Walk. The clarinet started its long life as the chalumeau, a single reed wind instrument similar to the recorder, and therefore a bit rubbish. German instrument maker Johann Christopher Denner is generally credited with inventing the modern clarinet by adding a register key to the original model. Most instruments that incorporate multiple registers generally have them run into each other, but for whatever reason, Denner didn't want this. The upper register on the Denner clarinet starts an octave and a perfect fifth above the normal register. It therefore has a much wider range. Now this, as I understand it, is what draws players to the instrument. The clarinet, in its multiple octaves, is therefore more akin to the human voice in terms of range of expression. It can sink to depths and ascend to highs that other woodwind instruments can't. That's a big reason why it has a strong, if low-key presence across popular music of the 20th and 21st century. You can hear the clarinet in some of the fundamental building blocks of audio storytelling. In George Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue, it sings and dances atop the big band beneath it like an exquisitely handled marionette. Its diversity is exemplified by its use in The Beatles' When I'm 64, where it's more of a comic presence, a jaunty walk in a very English summertime park that stops off at a picnic that sounds like it's minutes away from a beer tag. My favourite use of the clarinet, however, comes in the form where it initially made its impact. That led to it becoming part of mainstream musical language, in the form where I first experienced it. In jazz. Wait. Don't go. This is not a lesson in jazz or music theory. I am entry level in all things, and that is true here. I can't say that a certain piece of music featuring the clarinet in the lead hit me like a truck and expanded my mind through the beautiful soaring deployment of this particular instrument, because I cannot remember exactly where I first came across any piece of the music that featured the clarinet in the lead. I will hold my hands up. It will have been in some impersonal, auto-generated playlists that likely ran on from listening to something like John Coltrane. I remember hearing a certain tone and timbre, but just leaving it be. That's what jazz sounds like. I don't need to know the specifics. It's not until in the last couple of years or so that I learned what the instrument sounds like individually. That's because I hear something that catches my ear, turns my head and draws my eye. It's this. That is That Bug Dancing by Alas I Am Myself, one of the musical projects of composer Dina Kiner. Noble, proud, with a certain hangdog sadness, like an elephant with a limp. The clarinet walks and trips and starts again and stumbles again, constantly attempting to push forward, dragging itself on over the steadily increasing pace and rhythm of the backing. I don't know why this is the one. I don't know why this is the first time I hear this instrument and say, what the hell is that? It just is. Now listen to this. That is Woodstone Body Shift, an eyes closed sigh of a piece from the same album. Again, over a solid cyclical bedrock, the clarinet sings. The instrument fell out of favour in the 1940s, regarded as too traditional, even during the period of time that was making it such. We love making mistakes, and repeating them. One advantage of the endlessly cyclical culture of rises and falls and boom and bust is that for every trough there will be another peak. And that is true of this instrument, that stuck around through fallow years to now be a mainstay of contemporary and avant-garde jazz. This is by Ellery Saxel and Henry Solomon, released in February of this year. As persistent melodically as it is spiritually, the clarinet cannot die. Jazz is, famously, the most precocious of genres, constantly contorting and shape-shifting, largely unminded of the prevailing winds of culture, stretching out in any direction its practitioners choose. And so it is here. Neither slow walk in a park nor manic run through a crowded cityscape. The clarinet here is euphoric, a trip into the sky. But we must fall.
Hi, I am Bille, and I'm a composer and musician.
Bille is a composer, multi-instrumentalist and sound designer from Gothenburg, Sweden. In his words, he has a lifelong passion for melodies and is chronically curious about the nature of music, art, and how these can be combined with other things to create actual magic. His video game credits include Faye and Wavetail, and various quotes on his work include, "Faye sounds stellar the whole way through. Its music is passionate and beautiful," from IGN, and "an astounding score, some of the best music I've heard from a modern game," from PlayStation Enthusiast. I love Joel's work for the diverse instrumentation, and the way that, to me, his compositions, specifically those on Wavetail, feel like they are naturally and organically unfurling before you. Joel's soundtrack for The Midnight Walk does this too, and it was, according to the notes from the composer, recorded live in the studio, containing lots of improvised parts. It features ominous titles like In the Midst of Darkness, A Monster in Grief, and They Burned the House. It is, in spite of those gothic titles, a frequently beautiful listen. Longing, mournful melodies rising out of the gloom, the lead instruments bringing just a little colour to the downtrodden foundations from which they come. This matches much of the imagery and set dressing of the game, a world turned cold and grey through which sad figures trudge mostly through a lack of any idea of what to do otherwise. Bille is the pianist, and his sparse keys are the bedrock of the soundtrack. His playing, deliberately, rarely breaks out into long, extended sequences. There are precious few long harmonic stretches or traditional chord sequences, the piano instead being deployed in short, broken segments, the ground beneath which Agnes Högberg's violin takes flight. The violin takes on a more conventional role, signifying a certain sadness whenever it sings its solitary song. When listening to the work as a whole, however, when letting it roll over you and take you on its particular journey, there is one standout instrument, and that, of course, is the clarinet. On this soundtrack, the clarinet sings. The clarinet is a human voice in an inhuman world, transporting and connecting this landscape fashioned of clay and teeth back to a black and white New York, to, bluntly, artists and virtuosos, music made of hands and sweat, something real. Today on Dialogue Tree, we talk to the people behind the hands, behind the sound of the Midnight Walk. From the melodies and the music to the creaks, groans and screams. Let's hear from those people. The people that bring the humanity to Moonhood's dark, cold fantasy world. Bille, welcome to Dialogue Tree. Thank you for joining me today. I do appreciate it. How are you doing today?
Thank you for having me. I'm doing good. Spring is coming, sun is out. I have a bit of a cold, so my nose is a little stuffy and I might sound weird, but other than that, I'm good.
If you're struggling through a cold, I'd doubly appreciate you joining me today. Thank you very much.
No problem at all.
We are meeting today to talk about your soundtrack to Moonhood Studios' The Midnight Walk. And we're meeting today because the game has recently released on Nintendo Switch, and it has an upcoming physical release via Lost in Cult. Now, I'd like to talk about how your approach the soundtrack and some of the finer details of it. But I think first we should touch on your history as a gamer and composer. So first, do you remember your first experiences with video games?
Yeah, actually I do. It was a lot of my like gaming has, and also my career actually has been started with my older brother. He got a Sega Mega Drive from mom, and we used to play Sonic the Hedgehog together. Like it was like a simple multiplayer mode where one would play Sonic and one would play Tails, and as Tails you could basically not do anything. You could run after the best you could manage, but often you would just get off screen and disappear. But that was my role. Yeah. And that's like almost like the only game I remember. We probably had. Oh yeah, we had DuckTales also, like a really early DuckTales game from for the Mega Drive. So yeah, that would be my first experiences with games.
That is a very like classic, typical little brother experience with Sonic 2. Yeah, I don't think you're alone there. So similarly, do you recall the first instance of a video game soundtrack really catching your attention? Do you remember what it was and like why?
I mean, I do remember a lot of the soundtrack from that game, Sonic 2. And we would like made up lyrics for some of the tracks, and that was I think that would be it. And then there's like a pretty big leap for a couple of years before I played Zelda, The Ocarina of Time most notably, and also Majora's Mask. Those soundtracks really struck me, those melodies, and also like the fact that they have been reoccurring for so many games after that. These themes like Zelda's Lullaby and Kakariko Village and all of these, I also sing them for my kids when they're falling asleep. So these melodies are really with me, and has become like sort of like almost like traditional like folk music-ish, but it's from the 80s, so it's not really, but it's they have a similar like place for me. And then another leap of, I don't know, 15 years or so until Journey happened, and I had a really, as a lot of people had, a very special experience of playing that game and hearing that soundtrack. And I think Austin Wintory has got all the attention he'd ever need, but it's still, I think that soundtrack changed a lot of video game music coming after that. It was really impactful, both for me personally, but also like on the entire like world of video game soundtracks.
That's lovely that the music from Zelda has become a part of your life. Yeah. In that way. Yeah. It's interesting that the first soundtracks that like caught your attention were the Sonic ones. Yeah. Because obviously your music is very different. Yeah. From that. What would you say it was about, for example, the Zelda soundtracks that inspired you perhaps in your composition that the Sonic games didn't?
I mean, I think those melodies, or just the fact that they are so melody oriented, has been with me. Like, my music has always been very oriented around melodies, and I think that a lot of my musical language are based on these game soundtracks. Or based on maybe a strong expression, but there's something about the melody language, and they're present in Sonic 2 as well. They are more like beat based and like more pop songs. There's even rumors that Michael Jackson did some of that work. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but so it's like very different genre, but it's still, I mean, that was also like a limitation of the medium, that you didn't have that many voices to work with, like technically. So they had to sort of use melody because you didn't have any options to like make any advanced chords and stuff. So, but that, I think that melody, like that idea of working with melody like that has like sort of grounded my idea of what music even is somehow, like how I naturally just create music.
I think that's kind of a nice transition to the next couple of questions that I had for you. So from those early experiences with video games and with video game scores, how did you get into composition? How did you get from that point to picking up your first soundtrack work?
Yeah, so for me, it started with just we had an old family piano at our house, and I would just sit there and play without like knowing anything. I did take some piano lessons further on, but that has never been central. Very much like self-taught on piano. I would just sit at the piano and play. Sometimes try to figure out these video games melodies, but mostly I would just like sit there and improvise. And eventually I would accidentally play something nice, and I would try to play it again. And that way, I suppose you could say that I would compose in a very, very simple way. But that is pretty much still my process most of the time. So that was just very natural for me to do as a kid, and then I just kept doing it. And then later on in like high school, I got a copy of some music production software, and suddenly I was able to like store ideas or like manifest them somehow. Like up until that point, they have just existed in my head and my hands. But then I remember like being so excited about I can like keep them, I can record them, and they sort of exist in the world. And that was really, really cool to me. So from there, I just kept on playing, and then I could layer stuff in the software, and that has just been like a very natural way for me to live, I suppose. That was just what I did. And then again, my older brother started working with video games. He studied at a university in Sweden to be a game designer, and I did some music for like their school projects basically, and a couple of friends of theirs also. And then one day, a few years later, now I was in my 20s, my brother worked at Zoink Games, and they were looking for a composer for a game. And he told his boss, like, my younger brother is making music, maybe he can help out. And the boss was like, yeah, maybe. But then I just did a demo of 3 songs. I had a really, really like strong vision of what I wanted to do, and I was able to make a quick demo, and they liked it, so I got the job, and that was for the game called Stick It to the Man, released 2013, I think, or something like that. So that was my first job, and since then I've been working a lot with them, Zoink Games, and they later transformed into Thunderful. So that was sort of how I got started. So classical nepotism, basically. My older brother gave me a job.
It's nice hearing that your impulse is capture sounds. Like I can definitely identify that. Definitely relate to that. It can just be quite exciting. Like even just to like sketch things out, like to take something from your head to like it actually existing and something you can actually like listen back to. It's a very simple like thing, but it's incredibly gratifying just to be able to get ideas down.
Yeah.
So what is important to you in composing a score for a game? Are there any principles that you look to or composers that you think of? Like, should you get stuck at any point?
Yeah, what an interesting question. This might sound like arrogant. I don't mean it to, or maybe it won't at all. But I see like my job in a way is to create or handle magic, and that is something concrete for me. It's hard to talk about because the thing is that it sort of exceeds what you can do with words, but it's very important for me that I can somehow with the music connect to that dimension or aspect of reality, some sort of poetic approach to life, I guess. This is going to sound dopey and it's getting worse. But I mean, I have had jobs where I was, especially one, I won't name the project, but it was a project that was not like based on narrative and atmosphere or these things that I'm used to working. It was more like shoot things in space, and we need cool music to do that. And I couldn't do it. I don't know how to. Like, my only way to work is to like start with something about like human experience in some way, and try to tap into some sort of magical dimension or shared experiences. And this game didn't need that, and it just sounded very strange and overly emotional, and it did not make sense at all. So I ended up not doing that soundtrack. So it says something about me as a composer, that I don't like know how to just like make music that needs to be done. It has to, like, my only method is that it has to come from within somehow, and has to be authentic. And
I don't think that's arrogant at all. I think that's a great impulse behind any creative project. I think any piece of art should have some kind of like idea of should have some kind of pretense behind it, because you are creating something, and that has to have some kind of sort of emotional like grounding to it.
Yeah, very much so.
Which is the magic, the imagination. Like, art can't be mechanical. So yeah, I don't think that sounds. I don't think that sounds arrogant or pretentious at all. I think that's that's an inspiring sort of like impulse to have. So yeah, we'll come on to talking about the Midnight Walk now.
Yeah.
How did you get involved with the game? Like, were you approached by Moonhood, and did they come to you with a particular brief for what they wanted?
So yeah, they approached me, and I had worked with them before. Like, Moonhood was a new company, but was people that I worked with before on like Klaus Lyngenled, who is the owner and one of the directors of Moonhood. I've been working with him since that first job my brother gave me over at Zoink Games. And Olof Redmalm I've been the game director of Ghost Giant that I worked on a few years earlier too. So they were people that I knew quite well. So they approached me, and they did have a very particular brief. I have this band called Bortre Rymden, which is also credited on the soundtrack. That means something like furthest space, like the space that is most far away from here, Bortre Rymden. And we've always played like my compositions, and it's a quite like always like hopeful and nice and a bit melancholic, but still very, very based in like something hopeful and warm. And Moonhood approached me and said, "We want Bortre Rymden, but dark." That was the brief, basically.
Did you get to see what the game was going to look like before you started work on it? And if so, did that inform how you approached the composition?
Yeah, so that was a central part of the brief also. Like the thing about Midnight Walk is that it's made out of clay, like physically clay, and they wanted the music to be tactile and like acoustic and real as a way to match like the physical quality of the visuals. So that was how the idea to use the band came up, to make something really, really tactile and like as far as possible from clean computer generated music, something very organic and almost physical. So the visuals, so like the visual identity of the game was central to how we approached the soundtrack. Yeah.
Yeah, that's something that came up in my conversation with Ola and Christian. They had a very similar brief in that they needed to come up with something that matched the look of the game in its tactility, like you say there.
Yeah.
The game has a very handmade, like tangible feel, and the music and the sound design needed to reflect that. And it makes the world feel much more alive. Feels like a real like living, breathing world. Something that you can actually you could like reach out and touch. And the sound design and the music really works in tandem with that to create this like really immersive experience. And I just I wish that I sort of had the opportunity to play it in VR, because I think that would be like a really worthwhile experience. Yeah. Have you been able to play it in VR?
Not like the full game. I played it. I like tested it in VR during development, but not like the complete thing. But I think as well that would be like the way to play it.
Do you have any favorite sort of like character models in it?
There's so many. So many, and there is so. It's so cool to visit the studio office, because all of the characters and all of like every single object in the game is there at the office, like in glass boxes everywhere. Like every single tree and everything is physically like in the office. I don't know if I can mention a favorite one, but I think all of them is, and they're so detailed and like in a way that they could never do in. They could, but it would take so much more time to do that with like 3D modeling.
Yeah.
So they've said that it's even like it sounds like such a immense project, and it is, but it's still been like a quicker way to create models than 3D modeling. It's quite interesting.
Yeah, I just found myself sort of like stopping in the game, and you can zoom in with one of the triggers, and just like looking, like just zooming in on some of the characters, just and really admiring the detail in them. I think it's such an impressive feat. Back to the music. I noted from the Bandcamp page for the soundtrack the following piece of description. The majority of the tracks were recorded live in the studio, containing lots of improvised parts. And this is really interesting to me. So is that a typical part of your process? And would you say there are any specific pieces on the soundtrack that benefited from the improvisational approach?
Yeah, so that was a really fun and interesting way. And I wouldn't say that it's typical of my process. Well, in a way, improvisation is usually a part. But the thing here that we did it all, like the four of us was in the studio in the same room at the same time, and 90% of the end result is just playing recordings from those sessions. That's completely new. I never done that before. I used to do like one instrument at a time, and then I will patch it together later and layer stuff. But there's very little of that. Most of it is just 4 tracks straight up. And so I would come to the studio with compositional ideas. Some were written down in sheets, and some were more like I have these chords and this melody, and then I would just experiment in the studio, like the violin plays this and you play this, see how that sounds. Okay, that didn't work, maybe you should play that an octave above or below, and you change some arrangement. Like we were just live I was trying to direct them live, having my vision, and we would experiment, and it's a lot of recorded hours, but so a lot of magic happened within that room at these times. And I think one track that would benefit maybe most would be the Midnight Walk variations, because I simply just had that the theme, the melody, and the chords in a very, very, very simple and short form, and we would just improvise over that, and trying different things. Like what happens if the violin has the melody and you play this, and what happens if the bass plays this, and what happens if the piano is not playing at all. And we just try these different things, and it ended up in so many versions, and 4 of them is on the soundtrack, 3 of them with a band and 1 solo guitar. But there's hours of more of that song, just different takes. And we knew that this will be an reoccurring theme. So we will need a bunch of different versions. But yeah, that's probably the track that was mostly affected by that improvised project. But that was the case in many tracks. Some were more composed, prepared before we went to the studio, but a lot is improvised around a theme.
I guess that really adds to the organic feel of the soundtrack.
Yeah, it does. And there's lots of mistakes and imperfections everywhere. Yeah. And that's really intentional.
Oh, cool. Oh, that's interesting. You say it's not a typical part of your process, but was it something that you enjoyed as part of the composition for the Midnight Walk? Is it something that you would do again?
Yeah, I loved it. It was also such an amazing experience to be in the studio. It's also with these people we've played together for over 10 years, and I know like how it would sound, and I know that okay, I have this melody and I have these chords and I have this idea. I will just put it in the band, and I know that it will be beautiful. I can't really imagine how, but I know that it will be. And then to be able to just be there, I have like me being connected to the game's values and ideas, and sort of like reach into that and try to express that with directions to the rest of the band, and just like see that magic happening. It was really, really special. I would love to do it again, but it was very specific that it worked for this game. Most games that I've done before, it would not have worked at all. And I'm not sure I'm going to get an opportunity again that it will fit so well. But it worked really well with the theme of the game and the game's needs.
I guess it's probably quite liberating to be trusted to improvise in that space as well.
Yeah.
To have that faith from the studio, to be given that freedom to just create.
Yeah, that's very rare as well, and that is a result of me working with these people for over 10 years before. So they were very trusting, which was absolutely necessary for this soundtrack to be able to happen.
Yeah, something that stood out to me about the soundtrack is the sort of the contrast between pieces that sound cold and pieces that exude some warmth. For example, I found that songs like Midnight Awakening, In the Midst of Darkness and Nobodyville sort of fall into the former camp, while pieces like Inside Housey and Candle Valley fall into the latter. And to me, that contrast is an extension of the identity of the game, which kind of straddles this divide between horror and, if not comfort, but something slightly recognisable, something cozier. Now, would you say that's a fair description of these pieces? Like, was a mixture of tones your intention? And if so, what do you think you did in these pieces to convey that contrast?
That's a very thoughtful question, and a very how should I express it? It's just like head on the nail. I think that contrast between horror and comfort, and light and dark, cold and warmth is really at the core of the game and what it's trying to say. So what I did, I have one story that's very specific. It was a method that I picked up during therapy, actually, a few months earlier probably, which I practiced during this project. And it was about, because the game is about like darkness and how to relate to darkness in different ways. So what I would do, now this is in a way quite personal, but it's no problem for me to talk about. But I would like literally make papers with words on them. One paper I put the words faith, or it's a Swedish word, but it translates to faith or trust, like a safe space. And then I would have another paper, I would write worry and other flavors of like dark. One would say fear, and one would say shame and guilt. And then I would stand on the faith paper and like, this is my home, this is where I like want to be, this is my starting point. And then I would step out into the worry paper. Okay, this is what this feels like. And then I would step back to the faith one, and like from the safe space I could like lean into the worry and into the guilt and shame and the loneliness. So I would like try to like get a very concrete flavor of like, what does this feel like? And this was in the studio, and now I would sit on the piano and try to like translate that into something musical. So that was like a very concrete process that was a part of this. And also, and with the like hope of getting that stretch between these flavors of dark and safety or trust or faith. So that sort of polarity was in the core of the process and the vision. So some tracks exist in different of these flavors, and some tracks are more in the safe space, but always like in relationship to the dark, like the light and dark sort of can't exist without each other. And it's about the game. I think like the main message is about finding some sort of comfort like within the dark, not to like fear it, but to acknowledge it and embrace it somehow. That's deep stuff.
Thanks very much for sharing that. That's really interesting. I think some people maybe have a perception of composers as sort of like being like solitary figures, like hunched over a laptop in a studio. Hearing that you take like quite an emotion first approach to your work that's very interesting. Like yes, that's nice to hear, and I think that like comes through in the soundtrack. That it has a very emotive quality to it. So, referring to some specific pieces of music in the game, in the Midnight Walk variations and Looking for a Friend, these pieces open with a lone instrument playing sort of a simple sequence of notes, and it's a very mournful, like very sad sound, which to me feels like a signature of the soundtrack. And what instrument is that? And does that instrument represent a particular emotion or feeling to you?
Yeah, so that would be a clarinet, played by my dear friend Adrian Åsling-Sellius. And it's... I just love him playing the clarinet so much. He's actually a saxophonist, which he plays most of the time, but I make him play clarinet for this band, and he does it wonderfully. I can't say that it represents a particular emotion or feeling, because it is able to express quite a wide range of emotions. But it's something about the sound of a clarinet. To me, it's a very friendly sound. It's warm and friendly, and it's often in my music the clarinet sort of represents some kind of friend. It could be like a secret friend supporting you, and he can be sad. If you are sad, he will be sad with you, and he can be happy as well, but he's always there supporting you. Yeah, something like that. It can be very, very mournful, but it can also be very kind and happy.
Do you reserve certain instruments for particular characters on the soundtrack? Do like certain instruments like have a particular meaning for you?
I wouldn't say that actually. I have done that type of work earlier, but for this soundtrack, there's so many characters and so few instruments, and it's more about the relationships, I think, between the instruments. Mm-hmm. But yeah, maybe there's probably, if you would analyze it, you might be able to find structures that I didn't even that I wasn't even aware of when I did it. But it's more of an intuitive process for me, I think.
To come on to what is probably the centerpiece of the soundtrack, and that is the piece called Grains. This is like the longest and most elaborate piece on the soundtrack. The piano, it has sort of this wide like dynamic range. It's slow, it's fast, it's everywhere in between, and it builds to this like quite a really like stirring conclusion. And I don't really have a question about this piece. I just wanted to sort of like take note that it is like the standout composition on the soundtrack. Like, did you approach Grains like any differently to the rest of the soundtrack? Would you have any sort of like notes that you can recall from the recording of it that make it stand out to you in contrast to anything else?
That's interesting that you and a lot of the listeners also note that, because it was a track that actually existed before the game. So it's the only track on the album that is not original for the game. And it was written for an album that I had recorded and released a few years earlier. So that explains why it's very different in that sense. That it was made like entirely on I spoke about earlier on an emotional basis, but without like the context of being commissioned. And it was recorded with partly the same people, but a larger ensemble with like a full string quartet, and So, but it was different in that sense, and it was more of a personal, like an entirely personal background to that song. And it came about in a time which was very difficult for me, and I was able to somehow translate the sorrow that I was in into music. So that explains, that it does, and I'm happy to hear that it stands out, and it's been so nice to see that it has been given a lot of attention now. It's been out for a few years, but it's first now after the game and soundtrack came out that it's got a lot more attention than it had before.
Yeah, that must be really gratifying to hear something that, like you say, it's a couple of years old, like
Yeah.
kind of get a second life, and like still be appreciated, like years beyond its composition and release. Do you have a favorite piece on the soundtrack?
I think, Gräns is very special. Also, I should just mention the title. It's a Swedish word called gräns, which means limit or border or like end line. But nobody understands it because it's in Swedish, of course. But worth mentioning. But I think my favorite track, apart from that, would be one of the last ones called "And So There Was Light," which is also the same composition as Molgrim's Release. So it's one of these absolute like warmest points of the soundtrack. It's also the same composition used in a track you mentioned earlier, "The Candle Valley." It's the brief for it was originally for this like almost like a funeral sequence in the game. I won't like tell too much about that to avoid spoilers, but the brief was basically for a character who was at last able to like make peace with its sorrow and darkness and with the death of a close one, and translate that into some sort of warmth or transform it into some sort of warmth and light. And we also had a very special experience in the studio with the recording of "And So There Was Light," which is used in the end cinematic sequence of the game, where we literally just like had 1 hour to do it. I had this vague idea that it should be vocals in this end sequence. We have no vocals in the game, but it should be vocals in this end sequence. And we just met and rehearsed for 15 minutes, and then we hit record and did 3 takes. And then my friend, the singer, added some background vocals. And then it was done. And then we mixed it in like 15 more minutes, and then it was like sent to mastering. So it was a really, really quick process. And we connected so well, and could almost like touch the magic in the room what that was happening. It was a really special moment in the studio. I mean, I'm not the one to say if that comes true, but it was one of my like strongest studio moments in my life, actually.
So to close out our talk about the soundtrack and the game, were there any other moments in the game when you've played it, where what was happening in the game and where the interplay between what was happening in the game and your music sort of like struck you, that surprised you, or as otherwise was an otherwise memorable moment for you?
I mean, there was not a lot of like surprises like that because the process was so intricate. I was also working with implementing the game, the music into the game engine. So it was all very. I was very deep into that process. So there was no like surprises in that sense. But I think there's a lot of moments in this game where it really works well together. I love these the occasions of the Midnight Walk variations when they are in the game and you walk around the road. I think there's actually there was one. It was the end sequence where you light up the sun, and you have Potboy like produce more and more fire to light up the sun. And we did a version of Gräns, so the end of that song. It's called The Final Fire in the soundtrack. And because the music sort of existed like before they did the scene. So I did this version, which is just more power. It's like as forceful as it gets in my entire catalog. And then this amazing 3D artist Kenneth Backlund like made the sequence from the music. And the first time I saw that, I was like, "Whoa, this is so!" Because they even like did like rhythmical things. So the world, like as you fire this thing up, it gets so forceful, and everything like moves, and the ground shakes in time with the music. And it doesn't get like MTV strange. It just gets very, very powerful. Like the universe is playing this music because it's so strong. What is happening? That was really like took me when I saw that the first time.
Yeah, it's really nice, and I like the way that your soundtrack does build to it has all this darkness in it throughout most of it, with like sort of glimmers of light, and then it ends on this really quite hopeful, like quite optimistic note. I think it really builds there as well. Like you really feel like you've earned it by the end. I think it's really lovely. We should touch briefly on the physical release of the soundtrack, which is coming via Lost in Cult. Lost in Cult have a very sort of specific idea about what they release and how. Why do you think they approached you, or why do you think they sought out the Midnight Walk soundtrack as one of their releases?
Yeah. The boring answer is that I think that it started with them doing like a physical release of the actual game with the Moonhood. And from there, the step to also release the soundtrack wasn't that far, I think. But I also worked with another label earlier on in this process, but that didn't work all the way to the end. And so the Lost in Cult took over that process.
Now it must be very exciting to see like a really like deluxe physical version of something that you worked on.
Yeah, that's very exciting. I'm very much looking forward to see it.
Yeah, I know pre-orders are available now. Do you know exactly when the release date is?
I don't actually. There's not a set release date, which is usually the case for vinyls, because producing a vinyl is apparently extremely difficult, and the actual like physical pressing takes so much time, and it's always hard to predict. So, but it will be probably before summer, I think.
So yeah, we'll start to draw this to a close now, Joel. Are you able to share what you are working on next?
Not really. There is stuff in the pipes, but I'm not able to tell much more. There might be something with Moonhood sometime, maybe. But mostly since the Midnight Walk released, I've been taking some time off to work more on personal projects and taking it a bit slow, actually. Spending time with family and my piano. So, but there will be more music coming eventually.
Based on your previous work, that is very exciting. I really loved the Wavetail soundtrack. I didn't actually realize that was you until I started preparing for this interview. The sound in that game is something that really stuck out to me. So hearing that there's more music coming from you, it's very exciting. And that is a nice sort of transition to kind of my final question to you. Throw to you to tell the listeners where they can find you online, how they can engage with your work. Any links or anything you want to plug, feel free to do it now.
I will, in that case, mention my Bandcamp page, I think. You can just Google me and you will find me. I'm also in all streaming platforms and everywhere. I have a website, but it's messy in a transition period right now. But the Bandcamp is a good place to find everything. There's also the option nowadays to subscribe, and you will get all of my music, past and future, for a yearly sum. Check that out if you're interested. It's also the most direct way to support me.
Joel Bille, thank you very much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I'm very glad to be here.
In The Midnight Walk, you play a character known only as the Burnt One. As the opening narration states, after the end of the world, you awake from a deep slumber, broken, deaf, and blinded. The first thing you do is reach out ahead of you with your parched, withered arms and break out of your casket, staggering forward with blurred vision on your first quest, to find your eyes. It's a spectacularly grim sounding opening for what the developers call a cozy horror game, and yet, because of the known, well understood artistic direction being what it is, it's never quite as hellish as it sounds. You push forward through a tutorial sequence that introduces you to the mechanics that form the basis of what you'll be doing throughout the game. Lighting matches, lighting candles, solving small puzzles, hiding to avoid things that want to eat you, sprinting to avoid things that want to eat you. You come across a character that adorns all the key art for this game. The character that would make a lovely plush for someone of a certain disposition. That is Potboy. A character that manages the impressive feat of looking like something that would wake you up in a cold sweat whilst remaining undeniably cute. With Potboy in tow, you are no longer reliant on lighting matches by hand to bring light to the world. This companion NPC allows you to cast flame to distant spots, mostly in aid of solving the minor environmental puzzles that make up the gameplay. From there, The Midnight Walk is best described as a gentle 3D first-person limbo-like. You push forward, world-building handled through environmental detailing, something horrific scuttling off in the distance, eyes where they shouldn't be. You push forward through 5 chapters, tales as they are called, each located in a specific locale, each made up of a self-contained narrative. You drop in, learn whatever problem ails the natives of this environment, solve the puzzles that solve the problem, and return light, fire, or both, and move on. For example, the 3rd chapter, The Tale of Coalhaven, sees you coming across the titular town in a narrative segment lifted directly from The Little Match Girl. The furnace that powers Coalhaven has gone out, and the machinations that brought that about being the emotional core of this section that I won't spoil here. So, your task is to restore it. The furnace is encased in 3 locks. Solve 3 puzzles to unlock them, prompting a cutscene conclusion that ties up the loose ends. Then, an interlude. You are funneled back to the Midnight Walk, a bleakly beautiful road upon which you march in one direction while various twisted creatures march the other. The narration fills in some blanks. The shell phones hidden around the world fill in some others. I like those because they sound a little horrible. Listen to this.
The crawlers eat fire, it's true they do, but most of all they feed on you. Don't you know? Howdy do. Didn't you hear? They eat you too. Fire, fire, aye, it's true.
And that texture, the tonal shift between the cozy horror and the, well, straight horror, is what makes the game. The Midnight Walk as a game rarely deviates from the pattern it establishes in these early moments, but the Midnight Walk as an experience transcends those limits through the sound design. On a technical level, the game uses spatial audio. The developers recommend headphones, and as this was conceived as a VR experience, I can only speculate positively as to the quality of that experience. I imagine it's pretty great. Closing your eyes is a gameplay mechanic here, and doing so alters the audio, revealing hidden depths and details. Leaning in and listening closely, intently, feels good. Immersive. In some sections you have to use your ears rather than your eyes to find the things that solve a puzzle. But for me, in the audio, what I like best is this.
We Malgrims have a special relationship with fire.
How could this happen? Whoever did this? Oh, the flame warms the righteous, but the wicked who love destruction. The flame burns with a passion.
The wind blew cold in the cave, its whispers strangely soothing to the Merkel. As it turned out, the whispering belonged to a pack of starving crawlers.
Ours is a different connection entirely. Fire is our window to truth and into the world beyond clay, to which we must return.
How will we warm the furnace? Feed the thief to the furnace! Feed the thieves to the furnace! Coalhaven is doomed!
The weird noises this game makes are as important to the overall effect as the beautiful music that Yul made for it. I found the creaks and groans, the static, the slithers, the expressive vocalisations to be one of the more immersive aspects of the whole project. To understand that, where these noises came from and why they affect us, we need to take a trip back into the world of the Midnight Walk. 2 more sets of hands behind the clay.
My name is Ola. I am the sound designer and also the lead programmer actually for the Midnight Walk.
I'm Christian. I am a freelance sound designer and I worked on the last half year for the Midnight Walk sound design.
Christian Björklund and Ola Sivefäldt, welcome to Dialogue Tree. Thank you very much for joining me today. How are you both?
Thank you very much for having us. I'm fine. Hurt my back the other day, so I'm standing up today during this interview.
Oh no!
Otherwise, it's super fine actually.
Thank you for struggling through the pain to talk to us today. I do appreciate it. Christian, how are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. No back pain. I'm actually standing as well. I thought I'd keep, high energy or something.
Okay.
I have this desk, but I'm supposed to stand sometimes, but I never do. So then I sometimes actually remember to pull it up. And every time I say, "Oh, this is nice." Ah.
I'm letting the side down. I'm the only one sitting down then. So I feel like I'm really letting the side down. My excuses I've been running around all day, so this is my chance for a break. That's my excuse anyway.
I'm probably going to ask for a break so I can turn down in like 20 minutes because I get tired or something.
Oh, that's
because I'm old.
That's fine. I need a break every 20 minutes from anything anyway. Cool. Guys, thank you very much for joining me today. So we're meeting today to talk about the sound design work that you both carried out for Moonhood Studios' The Midnight Walk. And first, I thought we should cover a bit of your respective professional histories. So first, how did you both get into this career? What are some of the projects you have worked on that the listeners might know, or just any that you are particularly proud of?
For me, it's I think this is my first commercial game project actually for sound design. So my background is that I'm a musician since I was a kid, playing in a lot of bands. Then I actually got into the game industry as a programmer and been working with that for a long time. But always had the music and working as a studio engineer on the side. I have my own studio at home, recording a lot of bands, and then I got tired of the gaming industry, tried some other jobs as a programmer, got tired of programming. So then I actually started my own company as a sound engineer. I had my company for 20 years something, touring a lot with bands, working on theaters, operas, probably everything more, but more in like live, so to speak. But always had the sound, and like sound design has always been a big interest of mine. It's it's getting a long story this, but I actually when the pandemic broke out and all the live shows was cancelled, and I had to make a living, so I actually started to apply for jobs in the game industry again, and Moonhood came up, and they had this in this like job description where they were looking for programmers and stuff like that, and the job description ended with if you have some kind of skills that we haven't thought of, you like give us a call. So I wrote them a letter that what you need is a sound designer, and then I got an interview but during the interview, it was like I was talking a lot about sounds, and they were talking a lot about programming. So an hour into the interview, I said, like, I started to figure out that maybe I'm not here as a sound designer. So I asked them, like, I'm not here as a sound designer, am I? And they was like, oh no, why do you think that? We don't need a sound designer. We want you as a lead programmer. So that was very confusing. But I really, when I first saw what they like, their mock-up trailers and stuff they had done, I was like, I'm going to design sound for this. So I said, like, yeah, I take the lead programming job, but I am also going to do the sound design. And so I ended up in that weird position where I was both the lead audio designer and the lead programmer for the project.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Thank you. Like, I thought it was such an unusual credit on the game. The lead programmer and sound designer. Thanks for covering how you came to that. I feel like I could fill probably an hour with questions about your career history, specifically with recording bands. Maybe we'll have to save that for another day. So, Christian, over to you. How do you get into this career?
Yeah, I was messing around with computers when I was a kid, when that wasn't really something that everyone did. Because now you couldn't really say that you have computers as an interest, but then it was kind of unusual. So we tend to find each other, the nerd kids, and so I got involved with the Amiga demo scene, which is, I guess it's too long to explain, but it's a subculture with computer nerds trying to make cool stuff with the computers. And it was like before people joined up to play games, you joined up to try to make stuff. And that's when I met Klaus, actually, who's the head of the company. We did our first, he and another friend started making a pinball game for the Amiga called Slam Tilt. And I did the sound for that. And we were still in school. So that's, I've known him since 95 or something like that. So it's quite a long time ago. And then we ended up working for UDS, which was one of the, I think the next biggest company in Sweden doing games.
I think it was the biggest by that time.
Could be too. And then DICE, that became, or Digital Illusions became DICE, became EA, was they got bigger really fast. But yeah, and Ola worked there too. I don't remember if you mentioned UDS.
Yeah,
that's how we met the first time.
96.
Yeah.
Wow.
So he came to work there as well. But then I've been the same thing. I got bored after a few years and tried to go also doing sound engineering for a little while. So I worked a little bit for theaters and some stage work, and then eventually stumbled back onto making games. So I've been in and out of the industry since then. I mean, if you're old enough, you might have played Ignition, which we did at UDS. It was a car racing game for the PC. But then again, I also worked with Tarsier Studios here in Malmö. I was hired there for a while. I've also been freelancing with them. So I did work on Little Nightmares 2, for example, which is quite famous and kind of in a similar sort of cozy, scary genre. I wasn't the main. Again, I was just a sound designer in the team. But they also did a game called Static that I did on my own. I mean, I was the only sound designer and composer for that whole game. I would say that's the one, if anyone I'm proud of, is that one, because it's quite different. But it's only for the PSVR, so most people haven't played it. But it's very cool. It's very different, and it's actually a really nice experience if you get the chance.
So we've heard about how Ola got involved in the game. Christian, for you, how did you come to be involved in the Midnight Walk? And what appealed to you about taking the project on?
Yeah, so through the years, I've heard from Klaus once in a while, asking for help with audio. I've done a couple of works projects for him. But I think he wrote to me at some point in the early stage of the project. So and I didn't really know what to make of it, so I asked Sharon to just come and take a look at it. I can come to Gothenburg and say hi, and I did that, and we talked for a while. And then this is what I wrote in that article, designing what's it called, a sound effect. The game looked completely different. It was very stale, sort of empty, and it was completely made for VR only, and then there was no sound. I got some ideas what it could become. We had a lot of talk about it. I think Ola was on the project by then as well, or on the company, but you weren't there because you must have worked from home. Yeah. So I didn't meet you there, but Klaus mentioned it. And then, we got along, but then I didn't hear anything for a long time. I don't know, a year maybe or something, before they called back and just, okay, then now there's panic. We need help. So, and if I'm not mistaken, that was because Ola demanded that they got me in, because I suppose he was drowning in work.
Yeah, the problem was that I was alone on the project,
and
we needed someone more. And then we hook up Christian, which was a super nice collaboration. I was very glad that you joined.
Nice.
I'm glad you mentioned the interview that you gave for the website A Sound Effect. It was a joint interview that you gave that it's a remarkably detailed overview of your work on the project. I recommend it to anyone who's interested in the work and the process. Now, I won't be trying to replicate that level of detail here, but just one of the things that stood out to me from that piece was the fact that you visited Moonhood Studios in preparation for your work, and you got to spend time on the actual physical set of the game. Now, what was that like, seeing all of the the claymation figures, and did that experience inform the direction of your work?
For me, since I was at the office pretty much, so since I was a lead programmer, so but I would say it was very nice to be in the office and see all these clay sculptures take form, and that there was a physical version of everything that you worked on with digitally in the Unreal Engine, so to speak. So I think that influenced me a lot, and that also made me want I had this vision pretty early on that I wanted everything to be very organic, and that we should try to stay away from synthesized sounds as much as possible. That was one of my first kind of visions I got when I saw all the stuff that I want to keep it organic, to get it more immersed and with the art and design. Though we end up later with a problem where I guess Klaus and Olof really wanted everything to be all the textures should be stone, rocks and clay, which was pretty hard to I mean, there's only so much you can do with only those elements. So that was a path both me and Christian, I guess, had to fight with a little to try to introduce new elements, and it can't just only be based on those elements.
Yeah, my next question was, I guess, more for Christian, coming in later into the project. What was it like coming in to work with a studio that has this sort of quite distinctive and demanding vision, like Moonhood did for this game? Is it comparable to any other experiences you've had? And between the both of you, I guess, how much sort of push and pull was there between you and the studio with what they wanted and what you could achieve?
Yeah, this is the nice thing with coming in late, that all of this sort of, not all, but most of that struggle is sort of done when I'd say the last half year is typically you have to run towards the deadlines, and you have to focus and get the job done, and you can't really changing things too much anymore. But yeah, as I said, when I was there first to saw the early version of the game, I had a completely different vision, because I thought it was kind of cool that it was just a walking sim in a very still environment, and really it was scary in a different way. It was almost it it felt kind of artificial, much more, because sure, it was, you see all the details in the clay and stuff, but nothing was animated, or nothing, but very little things was animated. So my idea was like a super electronic sort of, I would love to have some really ambient electronic thing. But then coming back, and then you had, and also the composer, they had a different composer in mind by then. Now coming back, and it was Joel's music everywhere, and the monsters coming at you and screaming, and all the movements in the sides, and it was completely, and as you said, Ola, very organic. But then it's not hard, it's not different really, because of course there's been these experiments with the weird ideas that you always have to go through, especially in this kind of project. But then when it's settled, you kind of figure out, okay, this is how it sounds like, and this is what it should sound like. It's not unique in that, as when you're doing the craft, it's just as there's always an audio direction, even though it's not spoken out. You kind of get it, what it's supposed to sound like, and then so I don't think it was that special in the end. It's more about just trying to figure out piece by piece how to make it work.
And I already took the fight.
Yes,
for you. No, just kidding.
Yeah, but absolutely.
No, but,
you had some struggles, didn't you?
Yeah, we had our struggles, but also I guess one thing that I think was pretty nice most of the cases. I mean, we had our struggles and stuff like that. But also one thing that I think made it a little bit easier was that both Klaus and Olof was more like that they leaned onto us, and like that where we was allowed to be the experts, so to speak, and that we had the mandate to say like this will work, this will not work, and all that stuff, which was pretty nice because that gave us most of the times pretty free hands, so to speak, to for the direction of where we was going with the sound.
Okay. Yeah, it's worth mentioning that Olof is doing all he's writing the story, he's recording, he's doing a lot of characters himself, so he's also involved how things sounds as well, because of there's quite a lot of voiceovers in the game.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm going to ask you about some of those later. Yes, I wanted to kind of ask you about what your like initial goals and intentions in designing the audio for the Midnight Walk were. Now, Ola, you mentioned you want to keep things organic. So, Christian, we'll come to you in a moment, but first, Ola, like how did you go about maintaining that? What sort of techniques do you use to make sure that you maintain the organic sound that you're going for?
Yeah, I think most of the stuff, and that's also kind of the way I work. I work a lot with samples. I like to record stuff and like use samples more than using like synthesized stuff with synthesizers, and mainly because I'm not very good at it, I guess. So. I mean, I use Faceplant a lot, but that's mostly for like doing granular stuff and like tweak stuff, but it's always sample based most of the time. So I guess that was the main thing that I worked with was like organic textures for the recordings, as always has as a bass sound. And especially with the characters, that I tried not to process stuff too much to keep them sound like there was always some kind of human voice in the bottom, and then you like sweeten it up with effects and stuff, but it's still always like some kind of organic textures, and that kind of maybe mixed with the human voice or animals or whatever.
And Christian, when you came into the project, what did you think you would have to do to match what was already in place?
It's funny, I can't stop laughing when you say organic, because I'm sure you don't mean the team structure, even though that was, if I'm gonna pick something that's different with this game project from many of it, it's a very, I I felt that it's kind of tricky to figure out who's doing what sometimes, and they're not even a big team. It's like everyone is involved with everything, they use Unreal as kind of almost like a sandbox tool sometimes, and this becomes a very practical issue when you're supposed to we're in the chain, we're last, so we kind of have to figure out how things work, and our things are always dependent on all the other things in the games. So it's more like a practical thing that how does this work? How am I supposed to do this? And I did a lot of the processing for the voiceovers, and it was a lot of cleaning up or finding things and structuring. But when it comes to the organic side, I'm not that much of a recordist myself. I do it when I have to, but I rely on libraries a lot, and then I do a lot of synthetic stuff with huge effect chains. I like to work in Ableton if I can, because I know all the ins and outs. But it's more like you find it, you listen to it and you're trying to figure out, or you see something and you kind of figure out, okay, this should sound like this. How do I build that? And then you do use whatever tools you're used to use and just experiment. And a lot of it is sometimes just trial and error. You just have to try a method, see if this works. Okay, that didn't work. Let's try something else, and then throw it in the game and actually get a feel for it. And it's sometimes I wish I was more professional that way. You can just you see something, you know how to do it, what it's going to sound like, and then just execute. But that's not how these games works. It's the same with Tarsier when I work with them. It's like everything is so important that it sits perfectly in whatever you see. So you can't think your way through it. You have to experiment and listen and be open to changing all the time.
And the hardest part with that is that you always have the time aspect, that you're like, you need to be finished, but I would like to have some time to experiment and try stuff out and see what sticks. But you don't have the time.
No.
So I think like the audio in the game is like, it's a real artistic achievement. It's also like quite an impressive technical showcase as well. You're using what I understand to be like pretty advanced sort of sound systems to create the audio for the game. I think I'm right in saying that as part of the VR release of the game, you used systems called ambisonics and binaural audio. And I've got kind of like the most absolute basic level understanding of these systems. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about what they are and how you implemented them into the release of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there also there's a lot of like buzzwords about like binaural and ambisonics and stuff like that. But so the definition is probably everybody has their own definition of what is actually binaural or ambisonics, and but the way we used it was first of all I did a lot of like research for the VR version, because I never used that kind of in-game binaural stuff. So I tried out a lot of plugins for it. Didn't find any. I think it's still very gimmicky, but it kind of works. In VR, it works better than when on flat screen, I guess. But what we ended up with was we were using. We never used any third-party audio software, so we didn't use Fmod or Wise or anything. We did everything in Unreal, actually. So we were using meta sounds, and then we used a binaural plugin called what's it called? Resonance. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So it's a super lightweight, discontinued plugin from Google, I guess, that started it, and now it's on GitHub somewhere, open source, but I don't know if they are updating it or anything. But it was super lightweight, and it sounded decent, I guess. And we did a lot of workarounds then to like sugarcoat the bad stuff with the binaural, with some stereo panning sounds and stuff like that. But but binaural is how you mimic kind of how humans naturally hear or perceive sounds. So you mimic this in a 2D space. So you need headphones, otherwise it won't work. And then you simulate like the frequency shadowing of your head and spacing between your ears and so on with like filters. It's called HTRF, like it's head-related transfer function, I guess.
Good.
Yeah. So what you do is like you have this all these impulses that you have recorded with some kind of binaural microphones on a dummy head or something. So it's a kind of it's a lot of impulse responses recorded in like 360 space, and then you put them in this plugin or whatever, like a matrix, and you filter the actual sound that you hear in the 3D space depending on the distance from your head to the sound, and then you filter it through the right impulse response to make it sound like if it's over your head, beneath you, or left to right and stuff like that. So that's binaural audio. Then we used like ambisonics, which is like you have ambisonics is where you make a you can make like soundscapes in a 360 space, like a sphere around your head. So instead of a stereo file, you have at least 4 channels, which is the first order. Then you can make it more detailed with like 128 channels or something, but Unreal only supports first order ambisonics, which is 4 channels. And with those 4 channels you can build like a soundscape that is projected depending on where the listener is pointed. So you can make like in the same sound file you can have like let's say traffic like street noises to your left and an ocean to the right, and when the listener turns their head, everything rotates like a sphere around your head, so it gets pretty immersive. And we ended up using it mostly for like room tones in the game and wind. So you could, if it was silent, if you're in a silent room, you had this room tone that is like a little bit different on the left to the right or in the top. And when the player turns their head, even though it's a silent room, you should still get the feeling that you're actually turning your head sound-wise also. So we used that a little bit also in the game.
We made sure that you could, per sound, just turn the whole binaural plugin on and off, because I think for a lot of vocals it worked pretty well, if I remember, but all the sounds had a lot of noise in them. For example, the matches and stuff like that, you get this, you hear what it's doing with the filtering. It's artificial, so it's like it moves around and you get this unwanted artifacts from the movement. So I'm thinking we have 3 ways of knowing where something comes from, and that's the amplitude. If a sound is stronger on one side, that's what you do with a pan knob. And in headphones, that gets kind of weird. And then you have this time difference, and then you have, as you said, the filtering, the frequencies that happens from the ear tapes. And also there's all the, on top of that, what you hear is you have a sound in a room, you have the walls and the reflections. And actually to simulate this it's still, I guess it's possible, but to do it in real time in a game engine, it's not that easy. And it's easy to just you connect, or you get all these plugins and you connect it and something happened and then you're happy. But if you listen to it, parts of it works, parts of it doesn't, and you have to be very careful about listening and figuring out where to use it and not, and then fake it in other ways. I'm always a fan of like smoke and mirrors if you can, because sometimes you can just do
Yeah.
really simple things and you get a lot more effect than the simulation, because the simulation isn't really 100% yet.
No, and the problem with binaural, like in real time, to like simulate binaural sounds is that what might sound good for me, because like depending on what impulses I'm using for that binaural filtering, may sound bad for you, because your ears are not the same structures and mine, and your ears are closer or further apart. Like your ear spacing is different, so your brain is more used to interpret that kind of phasing differences. Is used in another way than my brain is. So it might sound, what sounds good for me might sound pretty weird for you. So that's where this generalization of binaural simulation is sometimes pretty hard to get good, I guess.
Yeah, I think some of the most striking segments in the game, in terms of sound design, are the sequences where you have to close your eyes to solve a puzzle, like to hear something in particular, or to navigate blindly through a space. What went into the design of the audio in those sequences?
What did you do?
Wow, what did I do?
Because I know there was a lot of different things with that. That was still going on after I started. You still didn't know what it was or how to use it, and it kept changing.
Yeah, it was a very long process. That's why it's it kept changing. But I guess we ended up with like when you close your eyes, you were supposed to like one with the dark. So I tried to go with that influence, using some kind of dark noises and rumblings, and it was also supposed to be like the kind of the room tone or sound effect that starts when you close your eyes can't take over for you're supposed to listen for different things in the world also. And I guess we had this long when we started to actually implement that game mechanics, I think Olof and Klaus was like, "Oh, this is so great. We now we're going to listen for this and this and this," and all of a sudden we had this problem with like, how do we filter out, like in this big world, which sounds you can hear and not hear when you close your eyes, because sometimes it could just end up in a cacophony or like it was you was hearing a lot of noises. So that was also we needed to implement some kind of occlusion system for that.
Yeah, I have to add to that. I don't know how many projects I worked on where there is an idea of doing something with the listening or synchronized or singing or controlling with your voice, whatever it is. There's always almost not always, but often people love these sort of ideas and to think about them and fantasize. But once you start building it, it's so hard to use it to make it useful. Or for example, if you want to have clues in the music that there's no visual clues, and that usually sooner or later in a game test someone wouldn't get it because people are not that used to using your ears only. So it gets simplified or cut completely. I've seen it so many times. So it's cool that it's something still there with it, but it is so much because it's easy to. It's not that sound is kind of abstract, and people get ideas and you fantasize, but you should be able to do that. But once you start building it and actually trying it, that's when reality hits, and then you have to like. Which is, I mean, it's real. There's still a lot of things to discover there. Absolutely, it's good to do, but it's very really easy to simplify in your head how it's going to work, and then you figure out what actually happens when you start implementing it, and see if people get it when they play. That's the the tricky part, I think.
Yeah, that's the trickiest part. When we started with this game mechanics, it was actually from since we were developing for the PSVR 2 on the PlayStation 5, where you actually need to close your eyes to close your eyes. You don't do it with buttons because they have eye tracking. So that's how we started with that game mechanics. And then it was like, people didn't get that in the beginning, that you actually need to close your eyes for real to make it work.
Just to bring it to a few of the individual elements of the sound design in the game, for me there was like several like standout like bits that have really like stayed with me since rolling credits on the game, and I thought it might be useful and interesting to talk about some of those and hear from you about how you created them. Specifically, it's the characters and the various like weird noises they make that really like give the game its identity and make it like the immersive sort of experience that it is. I'd like to ask you about a few of my favourites, which are probably some of the more obvious ones, and then maybe hear from you about some of your favourites. So the first one that came to mind, probably the most obvious one, what went into the way that Potboy sounds? How did you actually like create the noises that he makes?
I would say for Potboy it was Olaf's voice acting, and he actually just sat down in his kitchen, I guess, with the handheld Zoom, and did like hours and hours of sounds, and then he sent that to me uncut and said, "This is Potboy, do something good with it," which wasn't that fun to listen to and cut it up. And then I just puzzled all of that together to make him like different efforts, and we had these categories for that. And then for his like movements and all that, I tried to like, he is made out of clay, and so I worked a lot with like some China stuff and scrubbing bricks and rocks against each other and stuff like that, just to make his kind of body movement sounds. Otherwise, it's mostly Olaf, I guess.
Two other ones that came to mind were the Mulgrim and Moonbird. Now, were these sort of like similar things? You were provided with the voice acting, and then you applied whatever techniques you apply to make them sound the way they do?
Yeah, for both for the Mulgrim and the Moonbird, they had like more scripted lines and everything. But it was only like raw voice recordings, and then I had to like find out how are they going. So what's their character? More like so like Moonbird was a lot of like pitch shifting and delays and ambiences and some fire sounds in the background every time she spoke, and like that to make her big, I guess. For the Mulgrim was a little bit harder because I think she got the direction of being an old woman, which on the paper sounded good, but when we started implemented her in the game, it turned out to be a little bit too goofy, and we had very scarce time. So we didn't have time to like order like new takes or voice lines from that voice actor. So I had to do a lot of processing with her. So I tried to make her a little bit more kind of. We kept the goofy feeling of that old lady, but I added some like ice cracklings and some fire sounds, I guess, that I ran through some vocoder as a carrier with her sound, and then I blended that with her just to make her a little bit more strange or weird or something like that. But I guess, turned out okay.
Oh, it definitely turned out weird. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you have any other particular favorite characters to design for, or any other like standout elements of the sound design as it pertains to the narrative that stick out for you?
Yeah, I had fun doing the darkness parts when you actually encounter the darkness in the world, because then it's more like it was stuff going on, a lot of effects, no really visual character, at least not mostly. So you just have the eye or whatever, eyes coming up. And because then it's more open to interpretation, and I could just mess around with whatever effects or things that I want to see work. And also the way, I can't remember if it was the plan, but I noticed that it became less and less of an enemy and more like something you connect with. So it sounds less and less frightful, I guess, or aggressive with every time it pops up. And then also because it's in around you and the whole world changes. I like the kind of sound design challenge when everything warps a bit. I think also just a detail in the narrator voice in the last, when you're inside this dark before the last level, we just put some reverb on it, and all of a sudden it's there in the space with you, and it's such a small thing, but that's kind of stuff I think it's cool to discover, that just throw it into reverb and all of a sudden the whole perspective is different, because now it might be something that's there with you don't really know. But yeah, that's one thing I thought of.
Yeah, we also worked a lot with the impulse responses for the reverbs in the different rooms and stuff like that.
Oh yeah. All the caves have different reverbs.
All the caves have different reverbs.
No, that was a lie.
Yeah,
but kind of almost. Every single
almost.
one. No, but there's a lot of different small ones. You just that gives you so much if you just change it a little bit, especially if you go from one room to another and just replace it with something similar but not exactly the same, and you sort of wake up a bit. It's like mixing music. If you just do something here and there, it could be kind of small change, but if you just change something or change the balance a little bit, you kind of stay awake.
But we tried to actually like keep the all these like subtle changes. They are not that obvious, but it makes everything feel like alive all the time, like and it gets more immersive, though it's not like in your face different, but small subtle changes, like as you said, that we might change the reverb a little in when you go into another room, stuff like that, just to keep it like alive, so to speak.
Yeah, that's a word that did actually come to mind. Like while I was trying to like prepare for this interview, is like the fact that the world. I think one of the great assets of the sound design is the fact that it makes the world feel alive. It matches the sort of like the tangibility, the tactility of these claymation creatures. You really feel those in the way they look, and I think the sound really matches that. Like, it really does feel like this is a real like breathing world that you are seeing, as weird as it is. Before we close out, I had a couple of questions for you about the world of like sound design more broadly. First of all, can you think of any games from your personal histories that you would recommend to listeners as sort of works to study, like games that feature interesting, innovative, or like otherwise noteworthy sound design?
Yeah, for me it's Oddworld when it came out on PlayStation 1. I was totally blown away when it came for the sound design. It was actually one of the games that made me interested in sound design. But that's also like I can't remember when that game was released, so maybe it's not a good source today. But,
I mean, it's the first PlayStation, so it's quite some time back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was super good for being PlayStation, at least. So, and I think they were pretty early with this like dynamic music that's like it was the same score almost all the time, but it like intensified when there was danger and like stuff like that. But also I'm nostalgic now, but I think it was I think it still is a really good sounding game.
Cool. And how about you, Christian?
When I wrote it, I read the question, I was thinking of Ori and the Blind Forest for some reason, because I think it's a bit underrated, the sound design for it, because the music has so much space. attention. I think they got prize for the music, but not for the sound design. And to be honest, when I played that, I turned off the music and I listened to other music. I'm one of those. But the sound design, then you hear the sound design is really nice. It's nothing spectacular. It's just very, very well executed. It's a very attention to detail. It's nothing fantastic, but it's a very good job. And sometimes it's a shame that this happens a lot, but the music gets so much attention and you kind of miss the details in it. But it's really good sound design in that game too. Everything about it is good. So,
do you have any recommendations for aspiring sound designers on how to get started in the field?
No. Sorry.
Yeah,
that is a valid answer.
Yeah, but I guess it depends on what you're aiming for. But if you just want to start with sound design, or is it like getting a job?
Yeah, very good question.
But yeah, but I guess if you just want to start with sound design, I think you should like just get your hands on a handheld recorder. It doesn't need to be expensive or anything, and get out there and record and start listening to stuff through a microphone and in a decent pair of headphones. I think that's a really great start.
Yeah, and I think that today, especially if you want to work in games, whatever it is, try to figure out how to make a simple game yourself. And get Godot or some like more easy to get into game engine and see if you can figure out the basics and do something simple. Because that when I started, it didn't really matter because everything was so technical, so you couldn't really do anything. But now you're sort of expected to be quite hands-on, deep into the game engine for the most part, unless you're gonna just make music. So. And do that too, not just sound design, because you have to. It helps a lot if you understand more about the nitty gritty of actually making game, even though it's a lot of work.
Yeah, that's actually really good advice. I think that's really good to understand how audio works in a game engine and how to implement them, not just doing sound effects. But that's actually it's expected of you nowadays.
Yeah.
That you actually can implement them yourself.
I think we can call that sound advice.
Wow.
There we go.
Yeah.
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 Oh no.
Are either of you able to share what you're working on next?
No.
Okay.
I can't, but I can say as much that we are. It will be clay figures.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't even know myself. I'm just experimenting with my own little project at the moment. So we'll see.
Cool. Intriguing on both counts there. Yeah, thank you very much, guys, for joining me today. It's been really interesting hearing how the world of the Midnight Walk was created. I guess the last thing for me to do is to throw to the both of you, where would you like listeners to find you online? How can they engage with your work?
Well, for me, they can't. I kind of disposed all my social media a couple of years ago, so I don't exist actually anymore.
This is probably why I got approached for this interview and not you.
Yeah,
because I still have a website. It's qaw.se. I haven't updated for years, so it's one of the things I'm going to do now. But yeah,
links to your like websites and like your like credits on Moby Games I think is quite useful for people. That'll all be linked in the show notes. It just reminds me to say, Ola and Christian, thank you very much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you.
It was super nice.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah.
My thanks to Bille, Ola Sivefäldt and Christian Björklund for their time and insights on their work and creative processes. The Midnight Walk is a unique experience that is more than the sum of its parts. A strange and often unsettling one that still works to remind us that there can be no light without dark. Looking into the dark can be terrifying, but to embrace it and accept it as an essential part of life is to move forward, allowing us to truly embrace the light and the opportunities it gives us. Or, as one character says, levity and grace, as we make our way down our midnight walk. Thanks for listening. In the episode description, you can find a link to the show notes, which includes information on everything discussed on the show today, as well as links to where you can find Joel, Ola and Christian, the Midnight Walk and Moonhood online. The artwork for Dialogue Tree was designed by Pixel Benny, and you can find the show online at dialoguetree.cc. Talk to you next time.